I've come to believe that women's taste in men is a lot like chicken soup. But to help you understand this analogy, I'd like you to come on a little bit of a journey with me. So I'm going to take the metaphor and we're going to come back to it later. My basic idea for this video was to go on a scientific journey trying to research what are the actual traits that women like in a guy. I was doing my damnedest to leave behind my personal convictions, my ideas as a dating coach, and start from absolute scratch and only go where the numbers led me. My initial round of research showed a couple of really common traits. That is, women like men who are masculine. Shock. They like women who are tall. They like women who are tall. They like men who are taller than average. Ouch. I'm only 5'8". But I wanted to go and try some science of my own. Is it true that women are just not dating men who aren't that tall? To test this idea out, I went to my local shopping center where I began to count couples. I looked at couples where the guy was taller than me, and I looked for couples where the guy was shorter. This was very handy because I am dead on average height for Australian men. And what was interesting here was there was not a lack of shorter men in relationships with women, with kids, with families. So, short of assuming there's something wrong with the women in Gold Coast, which is a possibility, what else could be going on? It was at this point that I began to reflect back on the research by a leading scientific human behavior researcher by the name of Rollo Tomasi. Sorry. What? Oh. Really? Okay. I began to reflect on the ideas of some random guy with an opinion named Rollo Tomasi. His idea is that women have a habit of monkey branching from men who are average to men who are more desirable. So women are biologically predetermined to date average guys to have families with them and then go off and cheat on them and leave them for more desirable, wealthy, tall, masculine men. So I did some more research. And I found out things are a little different in reality. You see, I discovered that attractive men have worse long-term relationship outcomes. I discovered that taller men have worse relationship outcomes. I discovered that wealthy men have worse long-term relationship outcomes. And what's more, there seems to be relatively decent evidence that there's a habit of women monkey branching from wealthy, attractive men to more average guys. So why is this happening? Well, the common consensus amongst researchers, not random guys with an opinion, is that men who are attractive tend to also date women who are attractive. Attractive people receive far more opportunities to cheat, to leave each other for other people than average people do. So I did some more research to better understand what's going on. And I found something completely surprising. A research study of 7,000 women, which showed that women ranked kindness, intelligence, and loyalty far above looks, attractiveness, and height. So why is there so much disagreement between the studies? Why is this such a confusing thing? The first thing is rating versus ranking. Picture this. Imagine if I were to ask you right now, what traits do you find attractive in women? Odds are you're starting to think about personality traits. You're going to tell me things like, I think that her intelligence, I think her sense of humor, I think maybe her political leaning, I think open-mindedness, caring, all these kinds of personality traits are going to come top of mind. If instead I ask you to rank what traits in a woman are attractive to you, and one of those is looks, one of those is intelligence, one of those is caring, all of a sudden you're going to rank looks very high up. So the questions that we ask play a very strong role in the results that we discover. But then there's the problem of asking the question in the first place. Very often when we're asked questions about our dating preferences, we're inclined to be more politically correct than what we actually feel. So asking people questions as opposed to looking at how they actually behave yield a completely different set of data again. But really what we want to know is, what is the ranking? We know that women like looks, and we know that women like height, and we know that women like guys who are caring, we know that women like men who are intelligent. How do those rank? And not just how do they rank, how important are those rankings? Can you be a really average guy, but really intelligent and really funny, and that makes up for it? Or another way of asking the question, if you're really good looking, how much of an asshole can you be before she refuses to date you? Now, I could only find one study that attempted to answer some of these questions. And the data is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to go into it as best I can. So if you have a look at these graphs right here, what they're really showing is the relative importance between being very important on the right or very important on the left, and the traits here listed. And so how do we interpret this? Well, we see actually that physical build and attractiveness is more important to men than it is to women. But what's so interesting is you can see it is important. If this is the middle line here, you can see it is more important to women than men, but it's not aggressively so, right? You can see there's quite a wide spread of how relatively important build and attractiveness is to women. Likewise, when we go down here to income actually falls quite low for women and men, which probably shouldn't be a surprise. But what's interesting, if we go to intelligence, it's intelligence and education women are ranking very highly rather than income. So it's relatively more important to be educated and intelligent than it is to have a huge income, at least for long-term relationships. But what is also interesting here when we look at the rankings of things is that emotional connection, trust, and openness are all extremely important to a very high degree in long-term relationships. There's a lot more disagreement around all these upper factors up here. Then I did a little bit more research because I was starting to get very research hungry. And I discovered two more interesting things. One is that women's preference in men appears to vary wildly depending on her age, depending on whether she's looking for a casual or a long-term relationship, depending on the culture she comes from, depending on her intelligence and education levels, depending on her socioeconomic background, and a whole bunch of other factors. But while there is a large variance in research, there do appear to be some things that science basically agrees on. First of all, women do rank looks as relatively important. This does include things like height, bone structure, general attractiveness, masculinized features, but it also includes things like how we dress, our hygiene, how well we're groomed, how good we smell. All these things play a role together. So some of these are factors that we can change. The second thing that there's a good bit of evidence on, there are many skills you can learn that make you more attractive to women. In other words, there have been many studies where they take two groups of guys, and one group of guys, they'll teach confidence, they'll teach flirting skills, they'll teach humor skills, and then they'll introduce them to a group of women, and the women will date those men. And every time when we have a random comparison between men without that coaching versus men who do, the women rate the men who do far higher on attractiveness. The third thing that's very interesting is that there seems to be some truth to the idea that men objectify women more than women objectify men. So when we look at the dating habits of men and women, men appear to see women more as a bag of parts. In other words, she's really hot. They look at her body, they look at her attractiveness level, and they see those things and they become all that they notice, all that matters in that moment, especially when it comes to short-term relationships. Women, on the other hand, tend to see men much more as a complete whole, a conglomeration of parts that form a whole human being. They don't greatly out-emphasize any personality feature or any physical feature over anything else. They want a complete human being. Men can often be happy with just a couple of really great pieces. The fourth thing is that there is a scientifically significant degree to which average guys pay a penalty when it comes to short-term dating. That is, guys who are average will find it harder to find short-term partners. However, the difference is not as great as a lot of popular media right now is trying to suggest. The fifth thing that you may find surprising but seems to be quite consistent across the data is that attractive men, wealthy men, and men who date very attractive women play a penalty in the long-term relationship success game. And then we come full circle. Women's attraction for most guys is a lot like chicken soup. See, most people can enjoy a bowl of chicken soup. Most people agree that they like their chicken soup to be salty and not sweet. Most people agree they like their chicken soup to be light brown to light green in color, rather than blue or purple. And yet, if I doubled the amount of salt, most people would say that doesn't make it better. While most people prefer a salty soup, adding sweet corn can make it more enjoyable for most people. And it's true, some of you may have been born with better raw ingredients. But for anyone who's ever watched a cooking show before, you'll know that someone who knows what they're doing can take the most basic ingredients and make something amazing. And someone who has no idea what they're doing can take the freshest, most delicious ingredients in the world and bollocks it up completely. There is almost nothing in the scientific literature that suggests that men cannot significantly improve their ability to attract women. And yes, some men have an advantage over others. But not a single scientist is suggesting that you shouldn't be working hard on yourself and that will get you the best result possible. And many people, myself included, would rate pizza as their favorite food of all time. However, most people as well, including me, would rather eat chicken soup more frequently. That's because we value other things, such as our health, living for a long time, or looking great in a swimsuit. And the last thing I want to say, guys, is this. If you're going to learn to be better with women, don't be fake and canned. Because while someone may give you a try, you're always going to leave them disappointed. And no one wants that.